Hi, Lee Phillips here. I want to talk about passing an IRA on to your children after the Secures Act. The Secures Act was the setting every community up for Retirement Enhancement Act that passed in 2019, and it kind of did a number on your being able to pass an IRA onto your family. So let's talk about it for a minute. IRAs are a big deal, guys. The IRAs grow in either a tax-preferred or a tax-free environment. Of course, it's the standard IRA that grows in the tax-preferred environment. It's the Roth IRA that grows in the tax-free environment. The difference is the government gets its bite at the apple before you put the money in the Roth, and it gets its bite at the apple after you take the money out of the standard IRA. The government will always get its bite at your apple, so don't worry about it. It's always there. But the tax advantage growth in an IRA is a big deal. And I frankly, in 1974, when Congress passed all this IRA stuff, the standard IRA, I don't think they understood how big of a deal this actually was. They never envisioned multi-million-dollar IRAs. They thought mom and dad were going to have an extra $30,000, $40,000 in retirement and supplement the retirement a little bit. They didn't understand, one, the economics of it, and two, how people want to actually provide for themselves. But you take your IRA down and you put it in the standard brokerage account, you might make money. However, let me show you. You can't find me anybody that says, wow, my broker made me rich. Nobody's going to step up for that one, boys. You can find people who say, I have made money in my IRA. Well, let me tell you, your broker's no smarter managing your general account than he is your IRA account. The difference is the IRA, the tax advantage growth of the IRA outruns the stupidity of your broker. That's the difference right there, guys. The object in passing an IRA has always been to move it to the kids so that they could stretch it, is what we call, over their lifetime. And in 2001, Christy and I went down to Arizona and we took a class for 3 weeks. And we learned how to write IRA contracts so that the IRA could be stretched over the life of the beneficiary, the guy who got it after you died. And in 2002, uncalled for, the government came out and said, nah, we don't care. Anybody can stretch an IRA. All they have to do is make an election. But what that does is it gives the individual, a beneficiary who gets the IRA, the ability to keep it in the IRA over their lifetime. They do have to take required minimum distributions and that sort of thing. But those required minimum distributions are based upon their life expectancy. So they're not very big if I've got a young guy. And what happens is that grows to be huge over the lifetime of the individual. You leave that money in the IRA growing tax-deferred, tax-free for 50, 60 years. That's a huge deal. So we did it, and it was cool. But along came the Secures Act in 2019. And the Secures Act did a couple of good things for us. It addressed issues associated with the 401ks and the IRAs and the pensions and the 529s and that sort of thing. One of the things that it did is it raised the age where we have to start taking required minimum distributions. What's happening is the IRS wants their money. They want to tax this stuff. There are trillions of dollars in retirement plans that are not being taxed. And the government's looking at that going, wow, we got to tax this. So they threw us a bone. And they said, well, you don't have to start taking your money out and having it taxed. You used to do it at 79 and a half. Now the new limit is 72. After 72, you have to start taking money out based upon your life expectancy. You have to take required minimum distributions. The other thing that's kind of nice that the Secures Act did for us is it said, okay, tell you what, there's no age limit on being able to contribute to an IRA. You have to have earned income and that sort of stuff, but you can contribute at any age. You can set up an IRA and fund it. That's kind of cool. But really, the Secures Act screwed you. And it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. For deaths occurring after 2019, anybody who died January 1st, 2020 is subject to it. After that 2019 date, we can't stretch the IRA anymore. You leave it to the beneficiary, and the beneficiary has to take the money out within 10 years. Now, there's no penalty for taking the money out, so you leave it to your 20-year-old son. He has to take all the money out of the IRA within 10 years. He can take it all out day one, or he can leave it in for 10 years. And by the way, like 90% of the IRAs, the kid gets the IRA, even under the old rules where we could stretch it over their lifetime. The kid gets his IRA, he immediately cashes it in, pays the tax, and goes to Hawaii. The most expensive trip this kid will ever take. Because what he has done is he has spent IRA money, which is sacred money. Totally sacred. So you've got to teach your kids. They can't stretch it over their lifetime. They can, I'm going to say, stretch it for 10 years. They can take a little bit out all the time. In fact, the law doesn't say it, that the kid has to take required minimum distributions over this 10-year period, but the IRS has said, yes, you have to take required minimum distributions based upon your life expectancy. So they have to take a little bit out every year over the 10 years. But that means at the end of the 10-year period, wham, they now have this huge income bump. It's ordinary income to them, unless it's a Roth. It's ordinary income to them, and so in the 10th year, if they haven't taken anything out but required minimum distributions, they could have a big bump in their income, and that would put them up in a higher tax bracket and cost them a lot more money. So they need to plan when and how they're going to take this money out over the 10-year period. Now, you can still leave the IRA to a few select individuals who qualify. They're eligible designated beneficiaries. EDBs is what we call them. And if you leave your IRA to your spouse, they can stretch it over their lifetime. That's usually not as big a deal because the spouse is basically your age usually, and it doesn't stretch as far as if I left it to a grandkid and he could stretch it for 29 million years. So you're restricted in that respect, but you can leave it to a spouse. You can leave it to a minor child, and the minor child can leave it in the IRA until they get to be of age. That's 18 in most states. Until they get to be of age, and then the 10-year period, the 10-year clock starts, and they have to take it out within 10 years after that. They have to take out the required minimum distributions as they go along. But if you leave it to a minor child, that's a little better. Leave it to the spouse, or if you leave it to someone who is on disability or is chronically ill, as they call it, then that person can stretch it over their lifetime. So there are a couple of exceptions, but basically we've got to take it out within 10 years. Now, I want you to remember to subscribe, but I want to give you something too. I recently wrote an article. I put out a newsletter, a written newsletter every month, and I write it. And this is avoiding the IRA disaster. Frankly, I think the federal government is setting people up. We have literally hundreds of thousands of people violating the IRS rules. IRS hasn't done anything about it yet. But I will tell you that it takes the IRS 20 years to get around to doing anything. So you need to be aware of this brewing disaster, and you need to be able to avoid it, because the penalty for this disaster is confiscation of the IRA. That's not a good deal. Is the government really underhanded enough that it could let hundreds of thousands of people get in on this bad deal and then close the trap and take away their IRAs? The government's looking for money anywhere that they can get it, and I'm not sure that they wouldn't be underhanded enough to do that. So why don't you avoid it? Just send an email to info@legalese, legalees.com, and in the subject line, say request disaster IRA newsletter. And we'll send that out to you, and you can avoid a brewing disaster that a lot of people are going to face. So don't forget to subscribe and send the email to info@legalese.com, legalees.com, and request the disaster IRA report. All right, we will see you next time.